Well, joining me now, Andrew Bolt, who I'm pleased to say is on the mend and not far off being back in this chair. Andrew, thanks for joining me tonight. You've written a cracking column in the Herald Sun calling Melbourne a toxic warning for the rest of the country. Specifically, you point to a breakdown in authority, accountability and community. Can you talk me through it?
Well, Melbourne is the epicentre of the left in Australia. You were talking about the history of violent protests, and that's great, but this has gone on since 2000. The year 2000, you might recall, 3 days of blockades and violence outside the Crown Casino for the World Economic Forum. A West Australian Premier trapped in his car. Or 2006, when Peter Costello, then the Treasurer, had to demand that the Police Commissioner, then Christine Nixon, come and rescue them, the finance ministers, from protesters. This has gone on for a long time, but it has got much worse since the lockdowns of Daniel Andrews. It's not a coincidence that Victoria is a busted state, from the finances to your personal safety, everything really. Grim, grim, grim. The lockdowns created, in my opinion, a generation of kids, particularly the poor and disadvantaged, who were not socialised, didn't go to school, missed out. Crime from that point, particularly youth crime, just like in the last year, went up 18%. 18%. And that's after a big jump the year before as well. It is terrible. Then we have, of course, the lack of finance, which might explain why the policing's not up to snuff. The soft policing. There was a period, of course, where Victoria, the Chief Commissioner back then, refused to say Victoria had gangs, denied it. Actually denied Victoria had gangs and banned police from saying it had gangs. Well, now look, of course. I mean, then there's the mass immigration, and Victoria, Melbourne in particular, has exploded in numbers. Poor integration as a result. You can't miss the fact that so many machete crimes, for instance, or carjackings or home invasions include people from Africa, from Sudan or Somalia or whatever, and also Pacific Islanders. There's also others as well, but you can't miss that unless you're deliberately blind. So really there is a real problem in Victoria with a government that is simply presiding over a justice system that has been too weak for too long, as you actually pointed out with a couple of those instances of crimes on the weekend that you mentioned.
Just before we move on from Melbourne, do you think Jacinta Allen is either capable or has the will to turn things around?
Look, there comes a time when the damage is done and people have got to be held to account. I mean, the opposition could be led by Mickey Mouse. It doesn't matter. This government must be made to pay the price for years of mismanagement. It is a government, you might recall, that actually commissioned said, we'll bid for the Commonwealth Games and put all this money into it, and in the end, after barely a year, said, oh, look, we actually can't afford it, and then paid hundreds of millions of dollars to Scotland to hold it instead. That's how incompetent this government is. Plus, the world's longest lockdowns at the time, totally unnecessary, absolutely devastated Melbourne and the city's finances, and I think cost a lot of people respect for the police, which you see in the street. And I have to say too, let's not forget the ideology here. There were some, 36 groups that claimed to be participants of that protest that you mentioned just a few minutes ago, that violent protest that attacked police. And when you look at who's behind it, it really is rent-a-cause. They're just against society. They were people from obviously anarchists, communists, Marxist groups, Socialist Alliance, Palestinian groups, obviously, Aboriginal groups, even Filipino groups, would you believe? Filipino radicals. I mean, everything. This was just a protest of the feral and the people that just want to smash everything. What cause do they want? Whatever you got.
Well, Melbourne's falling apart, and so is the coalition. Barnaby Joyce spoke to Sky News earlier today about why he's going to break with the Nationals. Have a listen.
It is a reality. The relationship between myself and David over a number of years is, it's broken down, and it's very sad, but that's just what happens in some human relationships. And it's not really conducive to being effective for me nor effective for them to remain in the room. And so you've got to accept that and move on. The next thing is, well, what are you going to do next? Leave that one up to me. I'll make my decision in my time. I'm now, as I say, a free agent.
I guess I've got two questions, Andrew. First, how damaging is Barnaby's departure to the Nationals? And second, how valuable would he be to Pauline Hanson?
It's so interesting, isn't it? The Nationals actually banned one of Parliament's most effective communicators from campaigning at the last election outside his own seat. They shut him down. And now they're terrified because if he goes to One Nation, and that is absolutely on the cards, if he goes to One Nation suddenly will have, as I said, one of the most effective campaigners in Parliament, except he will be campaigning outside, well, it's going to stand for the Senate, and every seat that the National holds, believe you me, and they are now terrified. Now, how crazy is that? So it's a no-brainer, really. Barnaby Joyce can sit in a party that wants him just to shut up and say nothing and do nothing, or it can be part of a party which I suspect, when Pauline Hanson in her own sweet time decides it's time to hang up the boots, she's 71, Barnaby Joyce will be the natural leader, and it could be really interesting then.
Well, I've got Pauline Hanson on the program shortly, so it's going to be an interesting discussion. I'm keen to say what she will divulge.
We'll see. We'll see, because Barnaby and Paul and One Nation were today playing it cool. They're trying to lower the temperature at the moment. So this will be a test of your forensic skill to get her to admit she really wants Barnaby and he really is coming.
I was feeling good about it, Andrew. Now you've made me nervous. Hey, just quickly before we get to a break, your thoughts on Trump's meeting with Zelensky at the weekend. It's reportedly a fiery meeting characterised by shouting and cursing from Trump, who warned Zelensky if he doesn't accept Putin's terms, Ukraine will be destroyed. I'm just keen to hear your thoughts on how Trump's handling that conflict.
Well, Putin's demands that Trump relayed were to give up the entire Donbass, one-third of which at least Ukraine still holds, including its most defensive line, is really asking Ukraine to surrender and be vulnerable to a further Russian attack. It's a disaster. Trump cannot be trusted. This is just ridiculous. In September, he was saying that the Russian economy was on the brink of collapse, and why not Ukraine could take over recover all the Russian-held territories. Then just on Tuesday, he said, the Russian economy is really doing badly. Putin rang him, or they had a call on Thursday, and by Friday, his screaming abuse at Zelensky for not giving in, saying Russia's economy is doing fine and they'll win. I mean, it's just insane. Putin's on the ropes and Trump is throwing him a lifeline.
He is indeed. Andrew, it's great to see you. I'll be catching up with you later in the week. I look forward to that. Thanks for coming on tonight.